we'll start proceedings with our first presenter. Are you ready for our first presenter? Now, in the tradition of BettaKultcha, we like to give lots of moral support and enthusiasm and love to the people who present. It's like turning up at a party and they're both wearing the same dress, isn't it? It's, I think I've been outdone here. So, now, as far as I'm aware, Dan Ladd's his only trigger warning is that there may be an image of David Cameron in his presentation. But I've given you the warning, so if you have the nervous disposition, then you better go to the toilet now. Okay, are we all ready? I'm going to hand you over to the capable hands of Dan Lads. Give it up for Dan.
I am just going to briefly mention before I start, there is a brief mention of the events 10 years ago, last Sunday. So if anyone doesn't want to hear that, then opportunity. I am ready. The revolution will not be discussed at the dinner table. The revolution will not increase your credit rating. The revolution will not increase your current account balance. It will, however, liberate thousands from financial and physical poverty. But it will not be popular, especially with the authorities, especially if you choose to do it wearing a funny mask. It's been 10 years since the event of 9/11, and on that day 10 years ago, 3,000 people died. But I was reading a report the other day, and it just got me thinking, what would happen if that happened every day? Double. 6,000 people, 6,000, 7,000 people every day. Well, apart from this lovely bit of stock photograph, the UNICEF report on child mortality states that every day 7,000 children starve to death, to put it bluntly. And this isn't just a thing that's confined to faraway places. There's poverty on the streets of the UK as well. And what I want to ask is, why do we not notice these things that happen every day that are just as horrific as the big events we do notice? Well, we feel like when we give pennies to charity, that justifies ourselves. But does that do more to appease our own guilt or than it actually does in terms of good things? One thing I want to bring up is the fact that the media constantly skirt away from what are the real issues. Constantly bombarding us with non-information, things we don't need to know. And the product is that we care more about who wins on X Factor than we do about thousands of people starving worldwide. Another effect that we've got to consider is the fact that people cannot take this kind of thing. When you think about 8 million people dying each year, your brain cannot compute that. So it goes, hello, head in sand. Another thing I want to raise is the fact that basically any kind of kindness is associated now with socialism, and in the minds of many people that is equivalent to fascism, since the Cold War basically. We're constantly bombarded again in the newspapers with the cost of aid, the cost of doing good, the cost of helping people out, but we don't mention the fact that that's absolutely nothing compared to the bailouts we gave to bankers. And then we've got this prick who recently has been putting through the welfare reform bill, basically telling us all that everyone who is in need is actually guilty. It's all their fault, and that we shouldn't bother to help anyone. There's also what's called the bystander effect, and this is an effect observed. People have been murdered in public while crowds have just stood there and watched. And the reasoning is that because the more people who are responsible for something, the less likely any individual is to take action. Also, I wanted to mention that we've now become so accustomed to being essentially pestered over charity that a lot of people have developed almost a resentment to giving now. There's flaws in the education system too. We teach plenty of ancient history, plenty of facts, but how often do we actually sit our kids down and say, this is what is going on in the world at the moment, this is the economy, this is the political system? We've also got to say, no, we cannot rely, whatever you believe, you cannot rely on God to solve the problems of the world. I personally don't believe in God, but if you do, know this. God has made it pretty damn clear that we've got to sort our own problems out. It all pretty much comes back down to the capital system. And the capital system essentially in every way works from exploiting those who don't have the means to produce by buying into them and then having them produce for you. That's simply how it works. And if you think this is a socialist conspiracy or for whatever, look at investment. Investment is proof that capitalism works as exploitation, because that is exactly what investment is. It is the action of those who have money exploiting those who don't for their gain. And the other thing, as I've already briefly touched on, is the fractional reserve banking system. There is a finite amount of stuff in the world, a finite amount of produce, and a finite amount of money. So when you increase that money magically, it doesn't increase the amount of stuff. It just makes that money worth less. So what am I asking you to do? Well, I'm asking you to throw away your television, or at least turn it off for now. I'm asking you to talk. Talk to your kids, talk to people, speak about the revolution at the dinner table. Start to consider the things that go on every day. Think about the choices you make, the companies you bank with, the companies you buy from. Buy at local markets, not supermarkets. Make conscious decisions about how your actions on a day-to-day basis affect the things that we block out every day.
Dan, lads! Right on.